That's a different sort of wearable. Okay, I'm Francine Hardaway. I'm your moderator. I'm a partner in Stealthmode Partners, and we accelerated tech companies before it was cool. We've been doing it for 18 years. I angel invested before it was cool. I've been doing it for 40 years. And I'm now into wearables before it's cool. So it tells you what kind of person I am. I'm a bleeding edge person. I want my panel to introduce themselves to us. And then I'm going to ask them a few questions based on my own experience with wearables, which, as Myriam just found out, is not as great as it probably should be for the amount of stuff I try. Okay, go.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Kevin Morrow with Samsung, and when I joined Samsung a long time ago, I wasn't really leading edge, but I've sort of become and fell into it, and now I love it. Of course, I get access to a lot of gadgets that I enjoy, and certainly the wearables is an exciting place to be in. So I manage content and service business development and partnerships. So my goal really here is to help us bring app developers onto our platform, to find strategic partners to integrate into our devices. So I'm real anxious to talk with anybody who's interested in, especially on wearables. Thanks.
I'm Greg Biggers. I'm the Chief Marketing and Product Officer at SenseLabs. At SenseLabs, we produce a solution for doing performance brain training. It's a combination of brainwave sensing headset that looks like this. Don't worry, I'm not going to do the whole product page, but that looks like this.
I'll stop you, don't worry.
That I wear, and it pairs to my iPad and a bunch of apps to assess my brain performance, and then based on the places where I'm weakest, help me do training to improve. And the training happens through simple video games. Gameplay moves forward when I'm expressing the brain state I'm trying to train for. Gameplay slows down or stops when I'm not. And we help people improve focus, stress management, impulse control, things like that.
Hello, is this working? Great. Hi, my name is Myriam. I'm the Chief Evangelist for Pebble, which is a fancy way of saying that I do a whole bunch of things. It's primarily communications with media. And Francine, you're being way too modest. You are the queen of wearables, everybody knows that.
Myriam just updated my firmware in the green room, just so you know why he can afford to be so nice.
Well, you know, you got to take care of our customers. I'm sure you're familiar with Pebble. If you're not, go online right now and check it out, getpebble.com. We make a smartwatch. It's the smartwatch.
My name's Dean Weber. I'm founder and CTO of goDog. Thanks to the rest of the panel, Myriam and everybody, and Tony, the Always On team too. At goDog, our mission is to create a personal assistant for the Internet of Things. Wearables, smartphones, smart TVs, in-vehicle navigation. You're one personal assistant across all the devices that you use throughout the day. My background has been developing these kind of personal assistants and launched a personal assistant in the late 90s, the industry's first personal, kind of like Siri-like personal assistant. And this has always been a passion of mine to see this technology, come forth, especially on these kinds of devices we're talking about today.
Okay, so as I just told you, try everything really early. And I have tried at least 6 kinds of wearables. This is obviously Google Glass. This is the Pebble watch. This is the Misfit Shine. I've tried the Jawbone Up, the Nike Fuel Band, and the Fitbit. And my general overall opinion from having tried all these is not ready for prime time. Wearables 1.0 to me was a huge failure. And all my wearables, like everyone else's, are in the drawer, except for a couple that have some sort of value to me. The Pebble watch, because it tells time. The Misfit Shine, because it's a piece of jewelry and it's pretty and it doesn't get in my way and it tracks my steps in sleep. And Google Glass, because it allows me to take pictures of you while I'm up on this panel. But tell me about what you think is coming for Wearables 2.0. Anybody?
Well, I can tell you a little bit and jump into this. I think what customers are looking for, from what we're gathering, is very personalized experience. And I think that goes in two categories. In terms of hardware, they want choices. They want choices. They want to wear jewelry. They want to wear something that's extremely personalized. Like, we make choices of our clothing, of the shoes we wear, specifically because it's our style, and that style is very individual.
But
So,
I don't want smart earrings, for instance.
Right, but what
And
I'm
those
saying
exist.
is, if you look at a smartwatch, you want to be able to provide way more choices of color, materials, sizes, shapes, than what's available today. In terms of software, I think to really bring value and make an experience it's all about user experience, right? And so to make a user experience that is delightful, simplicity is the name of the game, A, and B, the software carries a lot of weight into what the experience is.
Yeah.
Most of it is software. And so once you address the kind of individual style on the hardware front, things like context become super important. Your watch is not going to replace your phone for a long time. I mean, people will always have their phone on them for the foreseeable future, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, right? So it's not going to disappear. So let's not try to replace what the phone is doing, but augment what the phone is doing. And at least I'm speaking about, smartwatches right now. I'm a Google Glass Explorer. I'm not wearing it today, but I have some ideas on what matters for other wearables too.
And Francine, I mean, you say you don't want smart jewelry, but for me, if I ever get to that point where my hearing is going, I would rather have a hearing aid that has some smarts in it and looks more like a fashion accessory.
Okay, but
than a robot in my
that's
hand.
another issue. I'm not arguing against wearables as medical devices. There are haptic shoes that tell blind people what direction they're going in and give them directions. I think those are great. But my personal belief has been so far that wearable devices are either, a piece of fashion that doesn't do enough, or something for remote patient monitoring in one way or the other. Yes, I would, if I needed it, like a pacemaker that talks to my doctor. But, that's not a mass market consumer product.
Right. Well, I think to add to that too, you see the Wearables 1.0, which is the single-purpose kind of a sensory device. And, I think that we all want to have smarts of these new devices, and to have a smart, intelligent, a system that can help you with these different devices and notify you of different things. Myriam, like you were talking about, it's really about the software, and it's about the experience, about what you can do with it, and the notifications. I see that eventually down the road, these things don't necessarily be tethered to your phone, right? There should be single, standalone type devices. And they can be wearable, or they can be mountable on a wall, or they could be, anything. It could have a screen, no screen, just a microphone. There could be a lot of different form factors that make something very, very usable, and to be able to communicate.
Well, do they do enough? Do they do enough?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question. I think Wearables 2.0, or perhaps it will take until 3.0. I think one of the marks of the movement that does take off is that they will be purposeful. That it won't just be a generalized sensor array, or if it is, it will be sold for a purpose. So for us, we help people improve their brain performance, and we can relate that to different markets like athletics or education or professional development, or like a heart rate monitor for certain people have a very important purpose. Right? It's not just I'm going to hang something.
But you're
on my
talking
neck,
single.
tell me how many
You're
steps I
talking
have.
single purpose again. I mean, it might as well be a fitness tracker if it's going to be a heart rate monitor.
I'd like to argue that we already have a Wearable 2.0. I'll give you an example. Pebble's a general purpose computer on your wrist, right? It requires a phone for connectivity. That could change, but right now, there are technical challenges. And a lot of people are kind of talking about pie in the sky, but nobody's looking at the technical challenges. Battery life, readable display that are glanceable in bright daylight. These are things that are needed for a watch. That's why we made the choices we made. Now, the reason I'm saying we're already at Wearable 2.0.
Battery life is huge.
The reason I'm saying we're at Wearable 2.0 is because we made a partnership with Misfit very recently. We announced it a few weeks ago. And there's basically a misfit app for Pebble that replaces Shine. So you now have seen the beginning of the specialized device being replaced by software on a general purpose device. So it's happening already. But you're right, battery life is probably the #1 thing to worry about right now. And nobody seems to care.
Well, and the sad thing is I love Sunny. And one thing I liked about the Shine, Sunny Boo is the person who makes the Misfit Shine. But the problem is that one thing I loved about the Shine, which I know he's going to eliminate, is that the battery life was awesome. It had a hearing aid battery and it lasted almost 6 months. So now it's going to be in a Pebble watch that I'm going to have to charge every 6 days.
Well, you know.
And his software was never the, major.
If you look around the room, nobody's carrying flip phones anymore. We've accepted the compromise of a general purpose device that has multiple uses that we have to charge every day. I'm not suggesting that wearable should be that way. But what I'm saying is that as much as battery life is important, I would still prefer a general purpose device with a good battery life over a series of specialized devices. I think that there's going to be room for specialized devices in the same way as people still use DSLRs instead of their phone camera. But I think that those are going to be more niche, People who do a lot of sports probably need just a second band with all the sensors for sports. And, Pebble can be just the accelerometer and the basic functionality. And together in a mesh network with Bluetooth devices, they can talk to one another and share that data. That's the way to go.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm just enjoying listening to everybody. I agree with a lot of what's said. I think for us, it's a very early market, and there's a core, like in the smartphone business or in the phone business, there's a core set of functionality that you have to get perfect. And I think that's an evolution, and that's happening. We're rushing to get those core functions perfect. There's a lot of great things on our current version of our year 2, or second version of our product, and those core functions will continue to improve, and we'll probably add some more functionality in that. But I think the fundamental question is what are the pillar functions of that device? You talked a little bit about that. Of course, it's got to tell time. It's got to be able to provide, I think, some of the core monitoring functions for people who are using in their health and fitness, and we've invested in that. But I think if to answer your question, what's going to change the market for us? I think it's really all of the folks out there in the audience who are doing things as when the ecosystem developed in the smartphone. So much innovation happened at such a rapid pace that I think at that point, when we have a rich ecosystem of folks who are thinking about these products and developing these products, we'll have a real revolution, and things will move very, very quickly. So that's part of why I'm here today, is because we are running up to our second annual developer conference here in San Francisco in November the 11th. And I just call out to all folks who are interested in participating in that. Our gear and wearables products will be a big part of that. So I think that part of the business is essential for the wearables too.
I agree with you, Kevin, that it is an early market, right? I mean, these are really emerging devices, right? And we look at...
I tend to jump up and down with impatience.
Yeah, I know. It's that technology acceleration.
It is.
Right?
It's like I believe every hype cycle. And so when I hear the promises of what it's going to do, I buy release 1.0.
And then you want
4K TV already?
Yeah, and it doesn't do any of it. Yeah, there's nothing to watch. I mean, that's exactly.
But the smartphone a few years ago, was an emerging device. The tablet too, and this is an emerging device. And through different use cases, through exposing it to to people, it'll vet out really what the use cases really are. I do see that it's a multi-purpose device. It could be, again, it could have a display. It doesn't have to have a display. I think it's attached to some cloud-based software intelligence that monitors things for you and notifies you of things. So I think that there's a lot to be done in this market.
Well, the closest thing I've got to a multi-purpose device is glass. And, the dork factor of glass has basically...
I know, I'm afraid of you.
Yeah, everyone is afraid of me. Everyone thinks I'm secretly recording them.
Taking pictures of this.
That's like a blinking red light when you record.
That's hard to take. Yeah, that's something they missed, putting in the product. It's something that shows you. If you know the product, you can tell when it's on. But if you don't know the product and you're not looking,
Then you don't want to know the person either.
That's right. And that's, I have enough of a problem with this.
See, I don't think I'm ready to declare that for Wearables 2.0 to take off, it's only about being multi-purpose. I actually think that as long as something is purposeful and does so in a way that's integral to your life and plays well with others, I think we'll see a spectrum of high number of multiple use versus, and all the way down to very specialized single use, but it has to fit into, I think it has to fit those three criteria. It's got to be purposeful, integral to my life some way that makes it worth it for me to charge it, to put it on, to check it, whatever it is. And then the thing that we haven't seen enough of, I don't think, is the play as well with others.
Right.
So I agree, and I think Kevin also touched on something that I think is dead on, and ultimately it's all about the ecosystem and the platform.
Yeah.
If you look at what we've done with Pebble, that's exactly it. It's an open platform. Anybody can become a developer for free. We have an app store. Developers can put the apps in the app store. The apps can be standalone or talk to the internet via the phone. And basically, we don't have all the solutions as to what our users are going to do with the product. But in order to find out what they're going to do with the product, we need to enable the developers to try new stuff out, right? When Mac came out, desktop publishing became a killer app. It wasn't until somebody was able to develop that desktop publishing app and that the laser printer came along, and together they made desktop publishing a viable option.
So are we then going to ever be able to merge the medical apps and the medical sensors, which people think are so important, with the,
It's happening today. Last night I was at California College of Arts at the Quantified Self Conference. And people showed a hack that lets their continuous glucose monitor display real-time data to their Pebble. Now that's liberating. That means that if you have a kid who has diabetes and they're wearing a continuous glucose monitor, they can be across the country at their grandparents who might not know how to take care of them 100% right for their diabetes needs. And you can monitor in real time their glucose levels and make a phone call and say, this is going to end badly if we don't do something now. And this is revolutionary. Right? This is life-changing stuff that's using general-purpose devices.
So does that, okay, so then we get into another question, and that is the question of HIPAA and data. The example that you gave of the kid and his parent and the glucose monitor, is a very limited example because all medical data is so severely limited by HIPAA.
Well, this is completely an open source project. Nobody asked permission to do anything. These users got sick and tired of the glucose monitor companies not giving them access to the data in the cloud. They made it happen by hacking the devices.
That's a great
That's
point.
how it should be.
I mean, it's a good point. But that when you look inside of the regulations around HIPAA, it turns out that once the consumer...
Turns out that no one has read them.
Well, that's true too.
They just scare everybody.
Once the consumer, people the doctor calls a patient, takes control of their data, then it's no longer governed by HIPAA regulations. And so if we can cross that threshold where the device manufacturers will trust us, quote unquote normal people, with the data that comes off of our devices, then the sky's the limit.
I can't even get my lab tests from my lab.
I'd like to remind everyone it's our data. So
Exactly.
It is our
we can do whatever the hell we want.
totally our data.
Yeah, but isn't HIPAA's more defined around the storage of that data than is in-flight is not really covered. It's that wireless transmission.
Oh, you tell that to anyone who thinks they're ever going to have anything to do with HIPAA. You tell that to my doctor, what's covered and what's not covered. He doesn't know, so they don't give you anything.
Right.
Right.
I mean,
they'd rather just not do that.
Everybody dealing with it would rather not deal with it, and I think that includes wearables makers. For instance, your device, probably would have the potential to do a lot more in a medical arena.
Oh, absolutely.
But I noticed you very carefully, and I'm saying this because I know you from before, you're very carefully making no claims that say
No medical claims.
claims, zero.
No, but you're right. The technology inside of this has already been shown efficacious to treat ADHD, for example. But we're not going to go there yet.
Right.
Because that is a highly regulated area and it'll slow us down. Eventually we will.
Yeah.
And
Well, when you go there in India, where they don't have the regulations,
Right.
and it's really easier to roll things out.
Right.
And to expand on that too, you look at other applications, whether they're enterprise or industrial or military for wearables. that's another huge area, I think, of growth. You know, we're very focused on the, you know, the consumer side of things, but there's a lot of other areas that this whole technology can really, you know, branch out into.
Well, that's how I ultimately feel about Google Glass. I mean, I totally quit wearing it every day. I tried wearing it every day, and you know, after I felt like I was in solitary confinement. So, except for geeks at geek conferences who all want to try it on. But then I put it away. But on the other hand, I can see where in the medical arena, for a surgeon who wants to look something up, or you know, somebody who's going through a decision tree to make a diagnosis, this would be very useful. So maybe it's not everything is an all-purpose device.
Right.
Right. Or a consumer device necessarily. It could be in a lot of other industries.
Very a valuable piece of medical, I mean, a military technology there. As a soldier,
Right.
I've never been a soldier, but if I was, I would want one.
Me neither, but I would want one.
But I still think that making a device like ours that's general purpose, waterproof, pretty rugged, is going to address a lot of these things at once. You can do consumers, you can do enterprise, and you can do some medical stuff.
Right.
At least that's kind of an add-on, not the main medical device.
I also wanted to add, I mean, the question you asked also is when, you know, what's going to change, how this 2.0 is really going to happen. I think a lot of it depends on really at the cusp of it now where pricing has to get to a certain point, right? I mean, pricing has to be reasonable for consumers. So we all have to be able to make these products that are generally acceptable at an acceptable price. And I think we're getting there.
Yeah.
And then we need new entrants. We need a lot of new entrants coming to the market. That we're going to, you know, we're hearing of things. I think there's going to be a lot of new entrants coming in the next 6, probably 2, 3, 4 months. And that will really cause a lot more momentum. I mean, we'll all be competing more aggressively, a lot more communication. We'll get people in and start using these products, and the whole cycle will start to take off. So
Okay, so then I think my last question is the one that Jay Sennett mentioned at lunchtime, those of you who were here.
Disruption.
When will this be implanted? How soon? I mean, I'm waiting for that.
It's funny you mentioned the implants, because every time I make a presentation about the future of wearables, I say it's just going to end with implants anyway, just be ready for it.
something to swallow.
That's what he said at lunchtime.
But I think, I don't think people are ready for that yet. The reaction I always get is one of horror, but I think it's inevitable. I think that, you know, once it's enhancing your life in a meaningful way, you're not going to, why not do it? I mean, it just becomes just the next logical step.
Which brings back to my point about purposeful.
Right.
When it feels purposeful enough, when it solves a problem that I care about enough, and it's integral enough to my life, then I'll let you cut me open and put it in there. Right? Like my friend Hugo Campos, who has an implantable cardiac defibrillator.
Right.
And he's been battling the manufacturer to get a hold of that data. Like that's a life-saving device for him. It's worth that being implanted.
I know, but they won't.
That's very purposeful.
But they won't give him the data. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
See, what everyone is worried about is that the companies that produce these devices, and it's in healthcare, but it's in everything else as well, are only doing it because what they want is the data.
Right.
And that eventually all our data will be aggregated, and I think that's cool. I mean, it's really fun. When my jawbone was still working and I still wore it, I really liked it that every once in a while it would send me a message saying you're in the top 10% of people your age and steps.
Right.
So that part's cool.
Right, but it's implantable defibrillator. It meets the purposeful and the integral test, but it fails the plays well with others test.
Right. Exactly.
Well, you know, we're seeing that with thermostats, right? Honeywell's product is not open, doesn't have APIs. You can't interface with it.
Of course it's
But
not.
Nest is. So I think, honestly, you know, this is our stance at Pebble, is keeping things open and having SDKs and APIs for everything is the way to go. And, you know, if you're out there making product, you know, you're either going to be on board or you're going to disappear. I mean, that's the future. That's how it's going to work.
Yeah, well, and I mean, to that point, I mean, actually, it converts to the point that you were making and the one Kevin, you were making about new entrants. I was speaking with Tim Chang about this a couple of weeks ago, and he's who I think is the smartest VC right now in the wearables market in general. And he was saying that one of the marks of success they're looking for right now in startups is combined software and hardware expertise. And then even some of the companies that they've invested in that he's helped succeed and even have exits, often erred too far on one side or the other.
Exactly.
So they got the hardware right, but they forgot that the software needs to interact with the community. Or the software's amazing, but the hardware, the battery only lasts 20 minutes, you know, and it fails 3 times a day.
Right.
But there's this, the team you need to succeed in this market is totally different than one of those other pure markets.
And that's what makes it so much fun. I mean, did that clock actually run out of time?
No, I think the battery's just out.
Just did.
I'm
Maybe
stunned.
you'll give us a few more minutes
I'm
if you need it.
stunned. Anybody, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I mean, this is a super exciting space, right? I mean, I think we're all very, very bullish on the market going forward. If you're out there and you're thinking about it, I think there's an enormous opportunity, and try to think, of course, not about the mobile phone product. I mean, a lot of people, I think, when they're developing, they're still thinking, even, we have thousands of apps, but they're still consciously, because they've done this on the mobile phone, is, start thinking about things that can be on your body.
I think you have to start thinking about
Yeah, different
real
ways.
estate, things like that. In different ways. Anybody else? Anybody in the audience want to say something to us?
Questions?
One question which I always struggle with. The entire wearable conversation seems to always be focused on health and fitness. Where are the frivolous apps?
On the Pebble App Store.
Frivolous apps, the
The
games.
frivolous
On the
app.
Pebble App Store.
You don't seriously
There's a lot of
think that
frivolous
someone
apps out
my
there.
age trying to take 10,000 steps a day isn't frivolous? That's,
No, he didn't say futile.
yeah, oh, right, exactly.
Nice.
Just
Exactly.
how the glass, I'm also an explorer. I looked at what kind of games can you actually put in this thing. There are a couple, but nothing really has kind of broken the mold. And once you do that, I think you actually create a new market, a new idea,
Oh,
which is
I
not
see what you're
just,
saying, that's right. If you're
Yeah.
gonna make a general purpose device, you might as well make one with games.
Yeah.
Make something that can be looted.
Yeah, when you think about that and how you make the game or how you develop it, because one thing I really love about our second version of our product is the smart interaction that it has. So
Yep.
when you pick it up, the watch lights up, or when it sees your eyes looking at it, lights up. But also the communication.
And it's showing your kid.
I'm showing my little boy. But when you think about the apps, I mean, the thing I love is like for health, I love the coaching one because it's all voice. It tells me, hey, slow down, you're running too fast, or speed up based on your heart rate. But I think the type of interaction model is very different than the mobile phone. So even from a game, it's not going to be the same type of game playing on mobile phone as you'll experience here. I think you don't need to necessarily see the screen to enjoy
Right.
the experience.
If I could just say, the first app I wrote for Glass was I ported Zork. Do you remember the old text-based games?
Sure.
Where you don't need to type.
Yeah.
You don't need to read. The whole thing can be read out in your
Yeah.
in your ear essentially. And so it's essentially adventure gaming. There's an opportunity there.
That's a great idea.
So if you pick up a Pebble, we have a lot of frivolous apps. We have a lot of games. We have a Yo app, for example. And arguably that's frivolous, could be useful. But games are great. If you have a few seconds or minutes to waste because of whatever you're doing, you don't have to pull out your phone. You can play a little game of. We have one called Tiny Bird, which is a Flappy Bird clone. We have one that's an actually exclusive, unique game specifically made for Pebble called Pixel Miner, which basically lets you mine pixels on your screen and kind of grow an empire from there. So we had a fun game. We have a whole bunch. We have one called Mr. Runner, which is an infinite runner where you have to avoid obstacles. These are super simple games. They're very appealing to people because they remind you of these old 8-bit games on your Game Boy, but they're on your wrist, right? So, there's that. But I agree. There's this focus on health and fitness, and if you look at what Pebble does, it's everything. Remote control for your Nest or for your Philips Hue. We have Pandora remote for the Pandora apps on your phone. You can listen to Pandora on the phone in your bathroom, like sitting there on your shelf, and wear the Pebble while you're showering and thumbs up the music you're listening to. It just brings a whole new dimension of delight to your daily life, and that's the idea.
And I mean, but I think lots of us in the wearables market are trying to use game mechanics to engage our users. But the fidelity of a gaming experience in wearables, just isn't anything comparable, say, to what you're seeing in Oculus, right? And so I think
I don't think it has to be.
no, it doesn't have to be. But I think we haven't.
Oculus makes me nauseous.
But I don't think our market, our industry, have captured the imagination of the game developers. And I mean, we work through games. Like the way you train with this is through video games. So I fly a plane with my mind. I drive a car with my mind. I shoot hoops with my mind. So there's games all over the place. But we're a ways away from the gaming sector of the wearables industry being something that's going to get its own conference.
But I think